How do you identify success?
How do I identify success? I think it's very subjective in nature, and that all who set goals for themselves and wish to obtain them, once they do that, that is the definition of success. It's not uh, by way of other people proselytizing you or vicariously living through you. Everyone gets to define success for themselves. I think it's also there are various domains of success. There's financial success, and that's the way that people typically define it. But then there's also emotional success. There is intellectual success. How many books do you plan to read? Okay. There's physical success, and weight loss. Those are just perhaps even spiritual. Someone may say, I endeavor this year to explore 3 different spiritual practices. That can be success by the time they achieve it. So again, it's very subjective. The person gets to decide what it is they want for themselves, what their desires are, and once they take the actionable steps necessary in order to achieve them, then boom, here goes success.
I like that answer.
But I think if I can add this,
Yes.
perhaps this is too much, too early, too soon. I don't care. Um, I think we have to get to a place where we stop making financial success the prerequisite to humanity.
Mm.
Because quite frequently, if someone walks into the room and they look like a standard teacher, first year teacher, second year teacher, third year teacher, and, hey, Miss Such and Such, or hey, Mr. Such and Such. But if somebody walks into the room who makes millions, we lay out the red carpet. They don't have to have integrity. They don't have to value the community. They don't have to advocate for students. They just need to have money. And then all of a sudden we give them respect. We
Right.
entail dignity or subscribe dignity to their names. And so I hope that as we define success, that we take advantage of the various domains in which success can be navigated or even manifest, so that money is not the prerequisite for humanity and respect. I had to put that out there.
No, I like that. I'm glad that you did because some people, like you said, assume that, oh, this person's million, so we have to do all these things in
Mhm.
the hopes of just basking in their presence or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. You know what I mean? So, absolutely. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Take a Space podcast. I am your host, Leah, and today I am joined by Dr. Walter Lee. Thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Can you
Glad to
please tell
be
the
here.
audience a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, I am Walter Lee, Dr. Walter Lee. I am the assistant professor of middle level and secondary education at the University of South Carolina, upstate, as we refer to it, in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I'm located here in the Greenville area, and I have been in education now. I thought about it for 10 years. 10 years in education. I started in middle school, taught for 5.5 years, finished my doctorate program, and then transitioned into higher ed, where I've been for the last 3 years. So that is a little bit about my journey. I'm from a small town called Utahville, South Carolina. It's near Charleston. A lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people have never heard about it, and that's okay. Here's your first time. Um, Alongside education, I'm an entrepreneur. Um, Many may know me as Dr. Walt. I have a company called Dr. Walt's Company, and I make natural cosmetic products such as soap, body butter, lip balm, lip scrub, rose water, face serum, that kind of stuff that explains the glow. Good.
You're looking good. You are looking good. So, thank you, like I said, for being on the show. In this series, we're talking about education and how we can help educators, parents, students, admin, and those on the faculty learn how to advocate for themselves in that space, especially parents and students who may not have access. There was a lot of pivoting that happened between 2019 and where we are today. What was your experience in that time?
Oh, I think the one thing that really arrested my attention was the South Carolina SC for Ed teacher walkout that occurred on May 1st, 2019. More than 10,000 people flooded the state capitol to advocate for the voice of teachers and the equity for students. Um, that was when I realized, wait a minute, other people get it too. I remember being in a school for 3 years, and I was frustrated with the way testing had been approached, and how the data was used, and the assumptions that were made about students and their intellectual capacities and their abilities. Um, I was also feeling the brunt of being underappreciated. I remember talking to a district representative. I'll leave it at that. And we were talking about, teachers deserving to be paid more. His response to me was, uh, teachers knew what they were getting into before they got into it. So why should that be my problem? Just sit right here for a minute. Let that sit. Let it sit. And the confidence with which he spoke that, it really left my awareness very uncomfortable.
Mm.
That because he believed that teachers knew what they were getting into on a district level, there was no advocacy and support for teachers, their well-being, and their financial, here we go, that word, success. If a teacher decided to consult on the side, then there could be backlash. If a teacher decided to have a business on the side, then principals would do things such as find ways to keep them busy after school, or assign them duties that would interfere with their financial success. And when I saw all of that happening, I was like, this has got to give. So May 1st, 2019, when all of those educators, to include myself and others who love and support them, showed up at the state capitol, I had to be there. And it was then that I saw that the paradigm of education really needed to change, and it requires a grassroots movement. However, it was also led by white women. Which then goes to Derek Bell's critical race theory that, white people would have to be the first to recognize that it's uncomfortable in order for change to happen. And unfortunately, that was perhaps another indication or demonstration of that theory playing out. Now, there is no hate, no heat, no judgment to those who led it. If anything, I applaud and I appreciate it. But I also look at the amount of teachers who were of color, who were not at the microphone, who did not have as much stake in it because they weren't a part of the organization. All of us benefit, most certainly. Yes, I get it. But I did some research and I explored the field myself, and I spoke to parents and students and others who supported them and teachers to see what was really going on. So 2019 was that aha moment for me. I finished my PhD, and to see that others were getting fed up, I felt like I wasn't in a world by myself. So we see 2019 where that happened, and then we get to 2020 when the pandemic occurred. All of a sudden, teachers are the experts. All of a sudden, figure out how to teach them. All of a sudden, what do you recommend for virtual learning? All of a sudden, use your creative interventions in order to engage students through Zoom platforms. Teachers, we value you. We want to see you succeed. Then we got back in the classroom in 2021. So you need to check these boxes. The expertise went out the door. Got a little bit of a pay raise right after the May 1st event. And it went right back to more duties, more obligations, more demands, and less support. Support is a very broadly defined word, so I probably should not have used that. But teachers feeling supported, it diminished. So when we look at this concept of teacher shortage, I always levitate when I hear it. There is no teacher shortage. Tell the truth. Just like they say there's a chicken shortage. There is no chicken shortage. Tell the truth. So one of my am I answering your question, or have I taken it too far?
No. You're answering because I wanted to hear where your journey is leading you. So yes, you're answering it.
Okay. So whenever I hear teacher shortage, I levitate. No, I don't care who's saying it. I don't care if you're a state representative, a district representative, or a principal, a teacher, an advocate. I do not care. There is no teacher shortage. You want to know why? Because when there's a nursing shortage, what do? increase the stipend, increase the salary, increase the income. That's what they do so that they can attract. But when there's a teacher shortage, there's currently a shortage in the restaurant industry. So I saw a post where Chick-fil-A was paying $19 an hour and Bojangles was paying $15 an hour. So when there's a shortage in those industries, the pay increases. Then we get to education. And we hush. There is not a teacher shortage. One of my professors, Dr. Russ Marion at Clemson University, he wrote about the idea of cause and effect, causation and correlation. So causation is cause and effect. Correlation is just that it happens to happen at the same time. We cannot look at what's happening now and say we have a teacher shortage. Because with that, the responsibility is now encapsulated on the teachers leaving versus those who should value and appreciate them. So if the teachers aren't here, it's because the universities aren't producing enough. If the teachers aren't here, it's because the teachers are lazy. If the teachers aren't here, it's because they can't pass practice and other certification exams. But what if the teachers aren't here because they have $30,000 in student loans and what you're paying just ain't enough? That's not a teacher shortage. What if the teachers are not here because they are sick and tired of being undervalued? That's not a teacher shortage. The responsibility now goes on leadership. The fish stinks from the head to the tail. So just because it's going on in the gills doesn't exclude you. So as I look at those things, I begin to advocate. And I'm very careful now about the way that I approach teachers when I'm invited to speak in schools or speak at district events, because I never want it to appear as though I am putting more work on teachers. Because rarely do teachers want to go to PLCs or PDs. PLCs or professional learning communities, and then PDs or professional development. Because it's going to be a time where they're here, you're not doing enough. What you're doing is insufficient for student learning. And I never want to present that. Now, there are some teachers that, they ain't doing enough. And that's flat out. Some people are in it for retirement. Some people are in it because they know they get all holidays and weekends off. That's why some people are in it, but that's not the majority. That's not everyone. And I can't speak for everyone. I can only speak from my experience and what the literature says. But be that as it may, my work has changed to figure out ways in which teachers already display some of the strengths that are associated with self-concept development or a revolutionary level in the classroom, and then to support them in leading students to a higher sense of self and a higher and best expression of who they are. So that's where I am right now, figuring out my voice in advocating for teachers, figuring out how to support minority teachers and minority students, and how do I use all of those topics in order to engender healing in classrooms, because that's typically a term that we don't talk about. But from my research, I realized it's something we have to get back to.
There was a lot going on between just in that short time frame. But I have found in listening to different people in education, especially teachers, the underappreciation for the role of the teacher, the expectation, like you said, to be expertise when something is happening. How do I deal with Zoom learning? And even when in the classroom, like, okay, well, now kids are coming back from previous conversations. Now the kids are coming back and they don't know how to sit down in the classroom. They don't know how to pay attention. They don't have the structure that they would have gotten in the last 18 months of being in quarantine that they would have had in going into the next year. So now it's put on the educators to learn how to make sure that kids are compliant. Like, are you being disruptive? Like, you need to get the structure pounded into you. But then also on the flip side of that, the teachers and other educators being stretched and pushed and pulled in all these different ways with other duties and assignments, and not just working in their passion of ensuring that the children learn their multiplication. Do they
Mhm.
know noun verb agreement? Can we teach science or history or whatever the case? It's like, well, I have to make sure that we teach to the test. They have to
Mhm.
pass these tests, otherwise I don't get a raise.
Yes.
So for those who are going into education, do you have, you with your 10 years of experience in it, and you've seen some of the changes that have occurred, where when you first got in and now that you have years under your belt and experience in where we are now, do you have advice for teachers who are coming into the profession?
Take care of yourself.
What does that look like?
Taking self-responsibility. That is taking action in ways that help you to reach your goals. That is being accountable for your decisions, your priorities. That is ensuring that you're not just a phenomenal educator, but you're
Mhm.
also a phenomenal lover of self, lover of family and friends. That means that you explore the world. That means that you get enough rest. Do not go in this profession and expect people to love and appreciate you. I know that sounds contradictory to what I said earlier, but we can only deal with what we have right now.
Right, right.
And that is, if you're going to go into a profession that's going to seemingly underappreciate you or not support you, that is now your responsibility. Leave the work at school. Enjoy yourselves on weekends. Do like I do. Come home after work, get some popcorn, fix a sangria, and watch Schitt's Creek on the couch while the popcorn just kind of spews all over your chest and on the side, and then clean up afterwards and go to bed. Okay, go to the gym. Take responsibility for yourself.
Mm.
If those students lose you as a teacher, they will find someone else. They will. And you cannot believe that your love for the students transcends all other people's love for students. No,
Mm.
that's not true. Somebody else will show up somewhere down the line and will give them the love that they need somewhere. So I just offer, to teachers going into the field, be self-responsible. Take care of yourself. No is a complete sentence.
That's a big one. That's a big one. I
Complete
find
sen-
that a lot of people are like, well, if I say no or if I don't do this, then who's going to do it? And it's like, well, they'll find a way.
Yeah, I had to pull back on that because, I come from a small Black community, and the model that I have been exposed to was you are selfless and you sacrifice and you do all you can for other people.
Hmm.
And if they say thank you, you've done well. Which has led to now that I in retrospect, I look back at family members or look at family members and I see that gratitude, thank you, and praise from other people may have engendered an addiction. Some
Hmm.
people call it people pleasing. I call it the addiction to gratitude. If I do this, they'll say thank you. If I say this, they'll say thank you. They'll appreciate me. They'll value me. They'll praise me. And when that happens, what do I have left? So I think in many cases, people become addicted to praise, gratitude, and the thank yous from other people without actually taking a step back and saying, wait a minute, my impact cannot be measured by their thank you. What was my goal? What did I want? And I have to tell the truth about that. So saying no is important to self responsibility. Saying no is important to living consciously
Right.
so that you don't get caught up in the disappointment when you don't hear thank you. I know this all seems somewhat contradictory to what I said earlier about being in schools and not being appreciated. But since we know that that's what that is, what is our response and what is our choice? So learn how to say no and don't get addicted to other people's gratitude, because if their gratitude is the only thing that you need to fuel your self-sacrifice, then their thank you will always be your way of denying your needs.
It's always that external validation that really
Mhm,
kills the passion in whatever you're doing.
mhm.
If you go 3 or 4 days without getting that external validation of somebody saying, good job, thank you, you're appreciated, and you start to lose the fire for doing whatever it is that you're doing because of that external validation, then it really diminishes and really calls into question, why are you doing this?
Yeah,
What's
you
the
gotta be
what's the
clear.
reason for you being in this place? So I want to go back to something you said before, though.
Uh-oh.
You it's not anything bad. You
Okay,
talked
come on.
about healing in the classroom.
Yeah.
So tell me about that, because that's not something that we
Mm-mm.
I've ever really dealt with, honestly.
Yeah,
And so this is my
yeah.
first time hearing about it. So I'm interested.
I about 2 years ago, I had to sit down and ask myself the question. Um, this is the first time someone asked me about it the way that you did. Uh, so about 2 years ago, I sat down and I did some reflection on my doctoral work and what I was doing in the classroom while I was there, and the readings that I had done. And I was like, I need to figure out what my work, my mission in education is. Um, what in the hell am I doing? Not that what I was doing didn't matter, but I wanted to get clear and rooted in when I write, when I speak, when I teach. What do I want people to get out of it?
Mm,
Um, and so it took me a couple of days. I landed on healing through love and critical insight. Healing through love and critical insight. And so somebody was like, healing, why would you say that in education? I said, well, it's necessary. Well, what is healing? Okay, let me go research. Why did you say love when you could just say care? Because love is different from care.
right.
Care is an ingredient of love, just like a egg is an ingredient of cake, but
Hmm.
love is love and cake is cake, and you don't break down the ingredients and say, wait a minute, because I have hair, I have Walter. No, that's just a part of him. Um, so I continued doing the work, continued doing the research. And what I found was, from a spiritual perspective, all of us are in pursuit of redefining the best versions of ourselves
Hmm.
and learning new ways to exist, to understand, to think, and to interact. Now, healing came about after I was reading some books that ain't got nothing to do with education. I was reading Michael A. Singer's The Untethered Soul. I read All About Love by Bell Hooks. I read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I read Black Teachers by Michael something. Okay, the book is somewhere in here. And as I was reading, I was like, wait a minute. All of us have things that we have to unlearn. I also read Blind Spot by Anthony Greenwald. And what I found was, even in the classroom, there are ways for the teacher to improve. Even in the classroom, there are ways for students to improve.
Hmm.
Even in society at large, everyone is trying to chase success, the best versions in the way to represent themselves. So, what is healing? I found that healing is not going somewhere and taking medicine. Healing is not, just going to counseling. Healing is unlearning the patterns that have not served us well. And what is required for healing is information, which points to self awareness. But in order to heal, it's not about getting more information, it's about learning that which was not accurate or that which did not serve us well. So, in the classrooms, for a teacher who has some unconscious bias, what might he or she need to learn or unlearn? because healing is the process of both learning and unlearning at the same time, intersecting in the same space, which makes it very complex.
Mm-hmm.
For the student who grew up in poverty, when they see the policeman, what might they need to unlearn so that they don't sabotage their well-being? For the teacher who grows up or the student who grows up in a middle or upper level income home, what do they need to unlearn about those who do not have the same conditions? I was reading Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and he mentioned Abraham Lincoln um, a conversation with his wife when she was apparently judging people for something they had done. He said, don't do that, because they are what you would be if you were in similar conditions.
Mm.
So healing is unlearning with new information, new ways of being. Love is accepting people and things as they are. That's it. It may come along with open, honest communication and care and relationship and trustworthiness. All of that are parts of love. And critical insight is the information that we point to. What does the research say? What does the literature say? How do we reflect on, think about, analyze, synthesize the information which we are faced with? And so 2 years ago, I decided that that would be my approach. And you'd be surprised that when I go inside of a room and talk to teachers about self concept for students, the light bulb goes off for them. Wait a minute. I did not realize that growing up in a lower level income home made me look at life this way. That's why I do that to students. That's healing.
Mm.
It is the recognition of the choices that we've made that may not serve us well. And when we're confronted with more new information, and it may not be new, it just may be new to them because they're finally able to hear it. They
Right,
have to
right.
be willing to hear it. And so my work in the classroom, even in preparing teachers right now, is helping them to unlearn something that would not serve them well when they get into the classroom. So I'm bringing in research, or I'm bringing in articles and having them to read literature that helps them to unlearn what they think they know.
So, what does that look like in the
Mm.
classroom when a lesson plan is going on, whether we're talking about English or history or math? What does that look like in the classroom? Is it a lesson or is it more of a way of teaching? Is it the
A way
pedagogy
of
that they,
teaching.
okay,
It's the disposition. It's the attitude. It is, do you allow, it is, okay, so let me say that first, and then I'm gonna go here. Do you
okay.
allow students to have voice and insight? Do you allow them to, as Chris Emden would say, do you allow them to participate in coachings so that they can express what may or may not be working in the classroom, what doesn't serve them well?
Mm.
When they're in there interacting, if a student feels bullied, if a student feels casted out, what is your approach to ensure that they know that they are seen, that they are valued, that they matter, and that they are appreciated? There is
Mm.
no one formula to approach this. If anything, how do we preserve the dignity in children? Uh, Even with classroom management, we know from B.F. Skinner with conditioning, we get better outcomes from student behavior and in their performance academically, not when we criticize them for what they're doing wrong, but when we also applaud them for what they're doing well. So in the classroom, how are we affirming students? How are we conditioning them to affirm themselves and to applaud themselves so that we don't need alone an award ceremony? That student can learn how to celebrate themselves for their accomplishments. I was talking to one of my quotes that I've been using a lot with students. If it's going on in our world, it's also happening in our classrooms. So if people in corporate settings feel underappreciated and unheard, then what's happening in the classrooms? If students are faced with things, events, conversations, decisions that do not acknowledge their culture, Where else is this happening in the world? Because as quiet as it's kept, all of us have transitioned through classrooms. Every last one of us. So for us to have a Donald Trump as president, who were his teachers? And what was the curriculum? What did he endure? How was he challenged or not challenged by someone of higher consciousness in the classroom setting? Will I allow this student who has lost multiple relatives to believe that he is unworthy of a full life? Will I allow a student who is unable to read at grade level at this time to discount himself from any type of progress in reading? Or do I challenge it? And do I tell you that you have more in you than you think you know? Do I point out the small yet notable progresses towards academic achievement? Not any one type of behavior. It is an attitude. It is a disposition. And I am not perfect at this either, although I express it. I'm a student of it. I'm not an expert. I always tell people when I present, I am not an expert at none of this, because somebody will come up 10 years from now and take my work and transcend it. I am a student of knowledge. And so when I learn, I teach, as Maya Angelou would say. And so I often have to step back and reflect in ways in which I now have not always preserved the dignity of students, where I have not always advocated for them, where I haven't always run interferences for students when I saw something coming down the pipeline.
Right.
When I didn't pull them aside, I didn't always do that. And so even now I have to reflect on that and decide differently.
What made you want to make that choice? Because you could have absolutely made a decision to stay where you were, not go into the doctorate program, just keep treading water where you were and not have to worry about the issues of others. But what made you want to be better than you were even 2 years ago, even 5 years ago?
I always say that I can't expect it if I don't extend it. So if I expect someone to see the good in me, I must also extend that to others. Because regardless of what is happening, the universe is going to honor our behaviors, our attitudes, our thoughts, and our energy. And if we put it out there, we can expect it to come back. So I wanted to make sure that if I am Black, and if I believe Black Lives Matter, the way I would want someone to advocate for me when there's a policy that impacts me that I might not know anything of, I need to start doing that for students when it comes down to their test scores, when it comes down to their reading levels, when it comes down to their physical development, when it comes down to a teacher not realizing the ways in which their bias is impacting their classroom management. If I want someone in the banking industry or an attorney to see something coming that would impact me, Kim Burrell said it best. She says, if someone was dying of a sickness and you loved them and they didn't know they were dying from it, would you not tell them? If someone was standing in the street and there was an oncoming bus and they're deaf, would you not go to their rescue? As simple as that seems, if I say I love myself and I love others and I want to advocate for the betterment of students and their lives, and I want someone to do that for me, both of them have to go hand in hand. So that's when I really started adopting that. If I expect it, I must also extend it. And that if I want someone to advocate for me, being a young Black male professor, then I need to advocate for the students that I teach.
Right. How can students, whether they are in higher ed or elementary school, how can they advocate for themselves in these spaces when they feel that they're not being treated with dignity or respect? They're not being seen or heard. They're kind of put to the side or put away and not really getting access, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and this may be how you've been treated this whole
Yeah.
time, and that's another thing that some people have to kind of contend with, is that, hey, I've always been treated like this is the way it's supposed to go. But how can we empower students to advocate for themselves?
That's a loaded question, and I'm not sure that I have the holistic answer to that. I'm not even sure that I have a part of the answer to that. What I am sure of is that in many cases, students don't know that they can speak up. So what I do know is that as teachers, we must create the opportunities for them to see the contradictions
Mm-hmm.
and to also give them the tools and instruments in order to address it. For example, this is something that I did in my sixth and seventh grade classroom. They transitioned from breakfast in the cafeteria to breakfast in the classroom,
Okay.
which means instead of students getting grits and eggs and a piece of sausage, because I used to like going to the cafe for breakfast too to get That's why I was so distraught and bewildered when they got rid of it. But that's not important to the story. So teachers would have a cooler delivered to the front of their room, which would have like two coolers, one with like milk and juice or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one would have like some banana bread or some type of little egg toast or something like that, prepackaged. The only thing they did in the cafeteria is warm it. They didn't cook it. And students would not eat it. They were like, I don't want this. Shh. They said that. And I was like, I understand. I don't want it either. And what I realized is, okay, so y'all intended to do this to give students more time in the classroom to get work done without realizing that their social existence must also be acknowledged and valued because they got something in the cafeteria that they can't get in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And if we actually expect students to eat in the classroom and they're not eating the food that you give them, then guess what? When they actually get to period 2 and period 3 or block 2 and block 3, they're too hungry to pay attention.
Right.
So the hunter is shooting himself in the foot and the dog is chasing its tail. So I taught the students advocacy. We as a class wrote a letter to the district office. We made calls to the individual who was over food management at the district level. They came in and brought in new entrees that would still be served in the coolers or whatnot, or the warmers as it was used, but it would give students options. Students also asked questions about the ingredients and the nutritional value. They brought in the samples and students actually tried it and gave feedback and they voted, no, we don't like this. We don't like that. I know your intention is to give us some pancakes that already have the syrup in it, but that's nasty. We're not going to eat that. As a result, they expanded the options for breakfast in the classroom that were available. They never went back to the caf, but they had better options in the classroom. And there was always an open line of communication whenever there were menu items that they did not decide on and they did not approve of. That was one of the ways in which I helped them to see that other people's decisions impact them and they must be willing to use their voices in order to advocate for themselves. That's one of hundreds of thousands of interventions that some teachers may have employed that taught students the value of their own lives and taught them how to advocate. What's funny is They didn't know they could write a letter to the district office. They thought they just had to eat what was provided.
Right.
That's what they thought. Their self-concept said, what someone decides for me is all that I can receive.
Right.
Until they realized, wait a minute, I get to act for myself. I get to make a request. I get to decide what goes in my body and what goes on around me. I get to decide. And so, what is that called? Healing. What is that called? Empowerment. That was one of many instances um, in the classrooms. I think that's something that we can do. Maintain open dialogue. Paulo Freire, author of Pedagogy of the Oppressed, the Brazilian theorist, or philosopher, if you will, he said that the prerequisite for dialogue is love. We must acknowledge people right where they are, for who they are and how they are. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
only way we can enter dialogue. Entering into dialogue is an exchange of ideas, an exchange of concepts, the exchange of experiences. And if the teacher believes that it is their job to teach and the student's job to learn and their job to share and the student's job to regurgitate, then guess what? That ain't love happening in the classroom, and students would never feel empowered to advocate for themselves. But if the teacher asks a question, is everyone okay? How's the temperature? Is the lighting okay? Small acts like that give students the right to ask for what they need. Instead of making a judgment about a student's performance on a test, we can step back and ask questions about what may have occurred.
Those seem
Are you
like
there?
very. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me? Okay. Those, even though
Yeah.
those seem like small asks, hey, how's the temperature? Are you awake? Do you need a 5-10 minute rest time? Or do you need to get some of that energy out that you couldn't get out since you can't go to the calf? Those seem like interruptions
Mm-hmm.
to some people, you know what I mean? Like, to a person like me, who's like used to doing that for, the twos and the threes, but to have that kind of conversation and give someone that agency to be able to say, it's cold in here, or
Mm-hmm.
hey, like, I can't focus because I'm thinking about what somebody else said in the calf, and I may have an issue that I need to resolve before I can focus
Yes.
on the work. And so, even though they seem like very small asks, just even asking those questions and opening up that dialogue can open up a whole different side of the relationship, the teacher student relationship, that people may not know how to tap into. Because I hear
Mm-hmm.
teachers say all the time, I want my students to talk to me. I want them to come to me. And if they're not doing well in school, and I reach out to their parents, and then they come to school upset because they may have gotten in trouble, da da da. But now the student doesn't want to talk to me. So I don't even know how to open that dialogue. So thank you for that, because I feel like that's an easy way to just say, hey,
Easy.
how are things going, without
So
being
easy.
too intrusive. Because I feel like some
Mm-hmm.
some people some people don't have boundaries. You could be
Mm-hmm.
asking way too personal questions, and you're in my space now.
Yeah.
Like, I need you to back up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
We
I
also have
really I
to
really
give,
like that. Huh?
we also have to give permission to students to tell us when we do something that offends them.
Right. And not get
That
defensive about
hurts.
it.
And not
Be-
get defensive about it.
Yeah.
And not blame yourself because you didn't know.
Right.
If you did not know, that's the reality. You didn't know. You're not making that up. But now that you do know, you can decide otherwise. Have you ever seen like a family member or a friend with a child, a toddler, and they went to pick up the child, and the child did not want to be picked up. They rather stay on the ground,
Hmm.
or they rather stay on the carpet, and the child kicked and screamed and hollered, and still they went inside another room without a conversation with the child, without explaining anything. They went to the next other room with the child. What do you think the internal message that that child is getting, that they may not understand, that someone can offend me, Someone can take away my right to decide. Someone can make a decision for me. And no matter how much I scream, I kick, and I holler, they will not hear me. Then they get in the classroom and the teacher decides for them. Then they get to college and someone decides for them. Then they get in the real world. And what happens? Oh, okay. That's not exactly how it works. So back to that demonstration of picking up a child who does not want to be picked up. Look at the ways in which we tantalize them and rob them of a voice. If I go to pick up my nephew and he doesn't want to be picked up, I ask a question. Well, David, what's going on? You okay? Did Uncle do something to make you uncomfortable? No, I'm okay. I just want to walk. Okay. Well, if I hold your hand, will you walk with me? Yes. The right to decide. He's worthy of respect. He's worthy of dignity.
Right.
One night he was playing, and I know we were talking about the classroom, but I have to get this demonstration for you to see how small gestures make a huge difference. I was at home this weekend, and my brother, his family were in town, and my nephew was like 10:30 at night. Man, he's jumping, he's screaming, he's playing with himself, having a good time. I mean, a jolly good time. Now, do I interfere with his reality and send a message that you're not worthy of experiencing the joy of being a child? My dad is in the room sleeping because he has to get up for work at 2 a.m. The rest of us are up talking. He's having fun by himself. What is the best way to preserve his dignity? Well, my approach was, David, come here. Uncle wants to talk to you. He was willing to come. You see Popeye's in bed? Yes. You know what Popeye has to do tomorrow? No. Papa has to go to work and he gets up really early. You know how you don't like to go to bed? You wake up at 6 o'clock sometimes? Yeah, Papa gets up at 2. And that means you're going to be sleeping. You're not even going to know he's not there. So we're going to have to do something to help Papa. We're going to have to, I see you're having fun, and I don't want to stop you for having fun because, listen, fun is fun. But what I want you to do, maybe if you just tone down your voice a little bit and not scream, you can still have fun while Papa gets some rest. Can we make an agreement on that? Yes. And if I hear you screaming, will you tone it down if I tell you that you're making a little bit too much noise? Yes. He had the right to decide. He was worthy of respect. He was able to choose what happens in his life, while my dad still had the silence and solitude that he needed to get rest. What if we start allowing children at an early age to decide, and we give them the thought patterns to develop empathy for other people and to understand with compassion that they don't have less fun because someone else has a need. We just have to figure out how to make all of that fit into this space that we take up.
Right. It's interesting because people could talk about this in very complex ways and make it seem like the most impossible, arduous task anybody has ever asked for us to not even, because they say, oh, negotiate with the child. It's not even negotiating. You get options. Listen, I need you to first, I need you to understand what's happening. And not in a derogatory way, but hey, let's have a conversation. Use words that the kid can understand. I need you to understand what's happening and how you fit into that and how you can help the situation. And let's look at some options. But people tend to make it, well, I'm not negotiating with the child. I tell the child what to do and the child does the thing. And like you said, now the child's 25, stressed out because they don't know what decisions they're supposed to make. All the decisions have been made for them. So you can't wait until they're 15. It's the same concept of telling girls not to date until they're married. Well, now they're 25, 30 years old, entering the dating world, don't know what's going on. Well, why are you still single?
Don't know
When
what
did
to
you
do.
when did you ever let me practice?
Mhm.
When what what is happening? So
Yeah.
I do like that idea of even the little things, whether it's deciding what's for breakfast, deciding how to do a lesson, when is a good time to do a lesson. Because if we pay attention to our kids, they tell us when's a good time for peak performance. But then also letting them understand their responsibility in their own lives. So I really
Mhm.
like the idea of it's just the little things. We don't have to make this some huge
Mm-mm.
lesson, but just it's just the little things like how you build relationships. So I absolutely appreciate that. Thank you so much for this conversation. It has been very eye opening. I have truly appreciated it. If you wouldn't mind, this is your space and time to tell the people any and everything you have going on, plug away anything, anywhere that they can find you if they want to hear more, if they want to be a part of any of the courses you offer. Please go ahead and
Mhm.
let the people know.
Well, I am Dr. Walter Lee. You can find me on social media on Instagram at Dr. Walt Lee, or you can find me on TikTok at It's Dr. Walt, or you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Dr. Walter Lee. So I don't have a whole lot going on right now. I'm working on some pieces that I hope will be published within the next year. Um, Coming up soon, if you follow me on those social media pages, I am going to offer a virtual and in person workshop on healing through words using affirmations to change your life. And so I've spent the last year studying it and reading it and ingesting it, and have experimented on some family members who have taken some major changes in life, all because of their words and their decisions. So that will be coming up soon. So just follow me on Instagram. Again, that's Dr. Walt Lee. On TikTok, it's Dr. Walt. And then on LinkedIn and Facebook, Dr. Walter Lee. That's all I have right now. The courses that I teach at University of South Carolina Upstate, you got to be enrolled. So I'll be doing some things virtually to assist with that. And that's it. That's it. My website is not done yet, so I can't send you there. When it is, we'll update it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Make sure y'all follow Dr. Walter Lee. This has been such an eye opening conversation. And let us know in the comments what you got from this conversation, because from advocating in the teacher space, advocating for the students, parents really helping to empower their students, teachers treating students with dignity, we talked about a lot. So make sure you go follow for more content at Dr. Lee, Dr. Walter Lee. And also make sure you
Mhm.
follow us at Take a Space Pod. That's Take a Space Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube page if you want to see our lovely faces. Thank you so much. And thank you again to Dr. Walter Lee for being on the show. We really appreciate it. Y'all have a great one.